So why did you start to binge and emotionally eat? So this is an important question to ask yourself, because if you don't know why you started, how are you going to know what solution you need? So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist specializing in emotional eating. And I wanted to dive into why you might have started to binge and emotionally eat. Binging and emotional eating are a little bit different, and I'll sort of discuss it as we go through, but I want to share with you what I see with clients, what I experience myself when I would emotionally eat, when I would binge eat. So emotional eating is what it sounds like. It's when we use food to help us cope with uncomfortable emotions. So it's emotional eating. We're eating in order to avoid or to suppress our emotions or sort of distract from them. And binge eating is eating to the point where you're eating a large amount of food. You're over consuming food past your limit, not recognizing you've reached past your limit. And binge eating disorder is when you're doing this several times, more than once a week, you're doing this several times. And so when I'm working with clients, they are experiencing both emotional and binge eating, because when they are triggered into their emotional eating, they're triggered into these binges. They can't seem to stop themselves. It's a very compulsive sort of behavior, and they're eating large amounts of food. And so I look at this a little bit differently. And so binge eating can be triggered by different reasons than emotional eating, but they interplay and they come together. And so it's important to understand why you have these patterns, because if you're an emotional eater, and let's say you emotionally eat and you know you're feeling a certain emotion, you're conscious of it, and it happens and you go towards the food, but other times you don't tend to be emotionally triggered so much. So you're not emotionally eating to the point of it impacting you physically or feeling like it's impacting your life. Whereas binge eating and binge eating disorder is happening very regularly, and it's impacting your life, not only in your body physically, but in terms of feeling out of control several times a week or every day around food and having this compulsive behavior. And so they're really intricately connected. And so what I want to share with you is that there are layers to this pattern, and I don't like to separate them. I like to define them in your overall pattern when I'm working with clients, because when I was going through my own emotional eating journey, I was binge eating. I would eat copious amounts of food. I would feed full up to here, but I was emotionally triggered. And I think conventionally, if you look at the standard definitions of what's going on, they don't dive deep into the underlying factors, the traumas that are going on that we store in our body, the subconscious patterns that are actually driving these behaviors. What's more commonly out there when you're talking about the psychology of this is really on the surface. And that's why a lot of the solutions that are sold to you are on the surface. Because if you think and you buy into something's wrong with you, we don't know why you do this, you just need to control at a surface level, you've missed the point, because our behaviors and the way we think about things is coming from a very foundational place in our upbringing as children. And so we need to understand where these patterns are coming from. And so today I'm going to sort of share with you how you could have come to emotional eating and even binge eating as they interconnect and the pattern plays in. And so with emotional eating, I always define it as a coping mechanism, because it is a way you deal with discomfort, uncomfortable emotions, stressors, and you didn't learn how to regulate your emotions. You didn't have parents or caregivers that could do that. And the reality is most of us wouldn't have had that. And so food itself as a substance is very soothing. It's very calming to the nervous system. It can give us a dopamine rush. And this is why we're drawn to more processed foods. And so our body is sort of trying to help us feel okay when we don't know how to actually meet those true needs of regulating our emotions, processing, moving through, and finding resolution. And so we then learn to go towards food. So we emotionally eat. And when triggers are very big, I find that's when we can start binge eating. And it's a part of it is because it's such a big emotion. We're just sort of like we're shocked into this behavior, but also the foods that we're choosing, so the processed foods, were triggered into emotional eating and we probably weren't truly hungry. Now these foods, they don't maintain sort of the dopamine kick or the high because they're not satisfying us on this deeper level. We want to eat more and more. You know, there was this study, and a lot of foods that are processed, they're actually created this way where you get a quick hit. So if you chew gum, you notice there's like that hit of flavor and it tastes really good. And then all of a sudden it doesn't have the flavor and you want to have another piece of gum to keep stimulating your tongue. So it's the same way with the foods. So when you're emotionally eating and you pick the processed foods and you sort of get that dopamine hit, it fades away and you need to get another dopamine hit. So you need more of the food and you need more of the food and you're sort of eating all of these empty calories and you're trying to you're trying to maintain this dopamine hit because you've probably been shocked into this bigger trigger. And so then it doesn't satisfy you. You can't ever fill that void. And so sometimes the trigger is not as big and you can emotionally eat and it's, you know, not a huge amount of food, quote unquote, but most of the time it's going to be more in this binging way. And so it's a way for your body. It's a way you think you can regulate yourself, not consciously. This is sort of happening subconsciously. What actually feeds into this binging pattern as well is that when we emotionally eat and we feel out of control with food, we try to control food. So we do all the diets and the restriction in order to control food, because we also have this belief that we need to look a certain way. And we also feel out of control with food. And so we try the diets and the restrictions. First of all, because we feel out of control with food. Secondly, because we feel out of control with food, it's probably showing up in our body and the way we look. And we want to control that because if we look a certain way, we're not going to gain that acceptance and validation that we're also longing for. So it's all of these patterns are mixed in. And this is why emotional eating, binge eating, it's very multi-layered. And you need to look at it as this multi-layered pattern. And so if you go towards the diets and the restrictions to get the body or get the control over food, or you go to the exercise plans to try to get control over the food, it's for this other reason as well. It's like, yes, to stop this behavior, but deep down, if you stop this behavior of compulsively eating or emotionally eating, it equals perhaps weight loss. And weight loss and a certain size or type of body equals acceptance and validation. And we're doing this in this really roundabout way because none of our needs, true needs, are being met in the process. We're messing up our relationship to our body, to food, and our relationship to our emotions has been messed up. That's what created this. And so this is all happening. And you have to be really honest with yourself, because one of the ways we hide from our emotional eating and binge eating is through the surface solutions, is into buying into something is wrong with our body, wrong with us, that we need something to fix us. We were born broken. And that feeds into the lie that we would have told ourselves when we were very young, not consciously, that something was wrong with us, that we didn't have our needs met. That this part of us is wrong, that our emotions are wrong, or they're ugly, or we shouldn't have them. And so internally, we develop this dialogue with ourselves where we shame ourselves, which then triggers emotional eating. It triggers perfectionism. It triggers all of these things. And so we need to, as we understand where this pattern is coming from, we can see it's like this snowball rolling down the hill. It becomes layers and layers of this pattern. And so if you can pull yourself out of it and start seeing, yeah, if I look at my parents or caregivers, there's a lot of emotional neglect and needs not there. And usually this is more obvious to us, those of us who acknowledge our traumas, maybe had bigger traumas, because when it's subtle, like you're not getting your emotional needs met, you're being emotionally neglected, it is more subtle, and you might think, yeah, I had all the things, so I shouldn't have this. And it becomes more difficult for you to see how this pattern would have formed. But if you really look around our society, it's everywhere. We're constantly obsessed with food, with our body, the latest diet, tell me what to do, what to eat. You know, we've lost touch with who we are because we were invalidated on such a basic level with our emotions. And that's a natural part of us. Our emotions as children are telling us what we need. It's giving us information, and our parents are there to guide us to understanding them, to understanding what they mean, to helping us decode that and to calm down in our body, to validate us so that we can move from a triggered emotional brain to a calmer state and start growing our logic and our prefrontal cortex. And we do this by modeling our parents and by them helping us regulate ourselves and move through and resolve situations that are happening. If they don't have this skill, they're not going to be able to teach it to us and model it to us. And so we're sort of left, in survival mode, and we do what we can. We use food to soothe ourselves. We see that if we look a certain way, then I'll get love and validation. That's how we get it. Instead of really dropping into that we are lovable and we are acceptable and we are worthy just as we are when we were born. We didn't have to earn that. But now we're sort of in this tumbleweed of all of these layers and layers of beliefs on us, this shame. And it comes out in many, many ways. But if you're watching this video, it has come out, and what is presenting as an issue to you is your binge and emotional eating that stemmed from this pattern. And so understanding where it came from, why you have this pattern, is the first step to finding a solution. So if you know this comes from childhood, from your emotions and not knowing how to regulate them, from having a distorted view of your body, because you think if you're going after this body to gain acceptance and validation, but this body is created by not being able to connect in with your emotions, or this dysfunctional behavior around food because you feel out of control with food, but it's because of this relationship with your emotions. If you understand that, you're gonna know that we have to dive into the root, which is in childhood. And from there, as we move through those emotions, the resolution and how to be with our emotions is going to be there, how to healthfully be with them, how to healthfully be with food and our body. We have to repattern that because now it's become dysfunctional and unhealthy. And so that's what we really need to move through this pattern. And when we do that, there's an integrative process happening. There's an integration happening where you will not be feeling this compulsion to go to food to soothe yourself, or this compulsion to binge, because when those deeper needs, emotional needs and boundaries and how to resolve situations are met, you're going to have an internal exhale. That younger part of you is going to be like, yeah, this is what I was searching for all those years. And food could never fill that void. Food could never make me feel this way. And so this is really profound. And this is why when we're working with this pattern, I use deeper tools like somatic work. We are looking at how to connect back to your body. So when we're doing this deeper work, we're learning how to connect back to your body on all levels in terms of how it feels with food. Learning and recognizing your hunger signals, your true hunger signals versus your emotional hunger, or connecting back to your body in terms of the rhythms and rituals it needs, knowing your body, understanding your body so you're not trying to contort it into this certain shape. And we're moving through those deeper emotions that are underneath, learning how to be with them, process, integrate them, and meet your true needs. And when we do that, it is like an exhale and a shift in the nervous system. And so our body wants to move towards its healthy. And when we have been dysfunctional in these ways around food, our body, and our emotions, this triggers our emotional eating and binge eating. And so we want to shift that so that we are now relating to it in a healthier way, and our body will follow suit physically. In an unhealthy body, it is in stress mode, it is in fight or flight, it is going to have poor immunity, digestive issues, weight gain, chronic inflammation, on the path to disease, low moods. And when we shift it to healthy, that is a nervous system and body that is in rest and digest, and that's going to turn on our immunity, better moods, better digestion. We're not going to have inflammation. We're not going to be down the path of disease. It's going to release weight it no longer needs. And that's the shift that we're doing here. And we're going to resolve those triggers around our emotional eating. So now that you know where this pattern came from, it gives you a better idea of what you need to do in order to move forward. And it's not as simple as doing a diet or a surgery or a pill that's on the surface. That's when you don't understand what this pattern is really about. Now that you understand what it's about, it requires different tools and a different method in order to do that. And so we do all of this inside of the Emotional Eating Evolution program through a step-by-step process to guide you through all of these layers through food, your body, and your emotions to resolve the triggers so that you can finally feel confident around food and in your body and resolve your emotional eating from the root. If you are interested in that, you can find out more below. But as a first step, I encourage you to start learning to discern true from emotional hunger. I have a free guide called What Are You Truly Hungry For? In this guide, it's going to help you start learning what it looks like when you're truly hungry versus emotionally hungry, and how to start catching those triggers that might be pushing you into this pattern. So you can find the free guide below. So if you have any questions about what I've shared, please let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.